You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
Well, good morning, everyone. And kind of interesting that we had several studies, not studies actually, they were actually headlines in health news that came out last week, and I thought I'd comment on them. They're pretty interesting. So welcome as we take up this topic. 5 interesting health news headlines that came out. So let me just read some of the headlines that came out this week, and then I'll do a little pontificating on them, a little bit of comment on them, but generally, interesting studies, like they weren't studies as much as they were headlines. So let me just reiterate that to you, okay? Harvard research. So this was a headline, 50% of the population by 2030, okay? So now I remember as a kid thinking 20, even the year 2000 seemed like I'm going to be ancient, 2020. But here's what Harvard is saying. Harvard research says that by the year 2030, 50% of the population will be severely obese. Now, you guys know me, I say this all the time, that if you left the planet in the 1950s or 1960s or even in the 1970s and possibly into the early 1980s, you left the planet, you went to Mars, you went to the moon, you went wherever you went, you just left planet Earth, and you came back in 2019, you just shake your head. What happened to people? How come people are so big? Go to your local mall and watch people walk by. Incredible, isn't it? People are so much bigger today than they used to be. And I don't mean muscles. I mean big, like in obese. It's incredible, right? You see even children, like when I was in school in the 1950s, like I can't, maybe 1 or 2 people were, kids were obese, but today, and again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. Our whole thinking changed when it came to food. And we've been on a failed experiment for, 50 years. We've been on a failed experiment, and that is fat makes you fat and fat gives you cholesterol. No, it doesn't. So what the food industry did is they took the fat out of food and they put what? Sugar. They substituted. In general, don't eat bacon and eggs in the morning. Eat our cereals. And I know I talk about this every time, but I'm just telling you what the headlines are saying. That by the year 2030, 50% of the population will be obese. Guys, listen to me. Anyone that's obese, they are already a diabetic. Oh, Dr. Martin, my blood sugars are normal. The last thing to happen to anyone is when their blood sugars become abnormal. Because your body has every buffer, every ounce of your body tries to keep your sugars low in your bloodstream, or regular in your bloodstream. Why is that? Because sugar is so toxic. Your body knows how toxic sugar is, because your body will do everything it can to keep your blood sugars regulated. So you say, so what is a poor indication of diabetes is blood sugars. Because you're probably a diabetic and you don't know it. I love what Dr. Kraft used to say, not Kraft dinner. Dr. Kraft was the foremost authority, and he died a couple of years ago at 90-something years old, but he was the foremost authority on diabetes, and he said, listen, don't wait for your blood sugars for you to treat yourself like a diabetic. if you have belly fat, if you are obese in any way, he said you're already a diabetic. Your body is fighting insulin. It's not sugars, it's insulin. But it's sugar in foods, the added sugars. Put your hand up. My name is Tony and I'm a carboholic, right? I often do this with my patients in the office. Put your hand up and admit you're a carboholic. But so are the world, the North Americans especially. We live in a crazy carb world. And we bought the lie that carbs, I'm not saying carbs are no good for you. All I'm saying is disproportionate, because they said fat is no good for you. And even you'll get a lot of guys, go on the internet, and you'll see a lot of gurus saying, you know what, watch meat, okay? And don't eat too many eggs. And, you know, I tell you, that is not true at all. It's what kills you is carbs. So if you get a chance, listen to my video, watch my video on the big four. Cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. They're all related to insulin. Insulin. It's such a big factor because, so here's Harvard. Harvard researchers are saying by the year 2030, like 2030 seemed like, you know, that's a century away. But you know what? When you think about it now, it's not that far away. And they're saying half the population. Well, you listen to anything that I've done, and I've shown you statistics on insulin that more than half already are diabetic or pre-diabetic in North America. It is the scourge of society. And let me just say one more thing about it, okay? Because I always bring it back to this practical thing, because guys, the average cost for healthcare, and we don't have healthcare, we have disease care, because we're treating symptoms, we're not getting at the root of the problem, but that's another issue. But the average cost per household in Canada is $13,500 a year that we pay in to our so-called healthcare system. It's not healthcare at all, it's disease care. We want to manage diabetes. We want to manage high blood pressure. We want to manage cardiovascular. And, you know, they're going after cholesterol when cholesterol is not the boogeyman. So, again, I just want to make it practical. If nothing else, get your carbs down. If nothing else, get your sugars down. Remember, carbs are going to be sugars in 5 seconds. Okay? I don't care what kind of bread it is. It's bread, and it will be sugar rapidly. Okay? And so we live in a different world today. We live in a world that never experienced what we're experiencing now. In all the history of mankind, never has there been such a crisis in healthcare. But remember, whenever there was the plagues of the 1700s and the 1600s, and plagues that came, the bubonic plague, the black plague, they were all infections, and infections used to kill millions and millions of people. Well, that doesn't happen as much. There are plagues, but the plague is carbs. That's the new bubonic plague. It's the new black plague of society today is sugar. It's sugar. And this is why your body does everything it can to control your blood sugars, because you leave sugar in your bloodstream. If you empty out your 5 liters of blood, you get less than a teaspoon of sugar in 5 liters of blood, because your body is out. Get out. I cannot leave sugar in the bloodstream because sugar damages your blood vessels. And that is why diabetics have so much trouble with circulation because their sugars are damaging their kidneys, their eyes, their limbs, and their heart. All circulation. Insulin, sugars. Harvard's got it right. And we ought to listen to that. So you take responsibility for your own health. That's very, very important. That was headline number 1. Headline number 2, low carb eating and migraines. Study came out, and this was in the news last week. You might not have seen it because it was more health news. I don't know if it hit any big headlines like the Harvard study did, but this study said that people that suffer migraines, if they go on a low carb diet, will help their migraines. Well, I found that out in my practice for many, many, many years, that migraines, look, it's a hormonal thing. Insulin and estrogen. People that have PCOS, women that have PCOS, polycystic ovarian disorder, they have acne, they have painful periods, they have high levels of estrogen and high levels of insulin. And this can cause migraines. High levels of estrogen and high levels of insulin can cause migraines. And when you change your diet, this is why I love the reset. The reset for people that suffer with migraines, tremendous, okay? So get ready for the reset. On this reset, it'll come to you via email. Make sure we have your current email, and we will send you this course. I do a teaching on, I think it's a four-part series that you will get in your emails on the reset. How to the reset? What does it do? In 4 weeks, it lowers all markers of inflammation. It lowers all your triglycerides, your bad fats in your bloodstream, coming from sugar, not from fat. And so even migraines, that was a headline last week in the health news. Okay, so that's a good one, isn't it? Here's a headline that came out last week. Now, I don't know if you saw this. It actually was on every major newscast. So if you saw it or a headline news online, here's what the headline said. Doctors warn vegans and vegetarians to take the risk of B12 deficiency seriously. Part of the headline came out of a story last week that a couple was charged with murder because their child died and they were vegans and they didn't give their child any animal protein or animal fat at all. Now listen, guys, I don't want to even go after the motives of this couple. Their motives might have been wonderful. They bought the lie that meat is no good for you. They bought the lie that fat isn't good for you. They bought the lie that protein in animal food and in dairy and all that is bad for you. Well, it's a lie. And again, I get a lot of flack for being the farmer's best friend. Okay? Listen, you farmers, you owe me money. Send me check. I'm always defending you. Okay? And I know you have plants on farms too. But the farmer, pretend you lived 100 years ago. Pretend. Well, you weren't going in maybe 150 years. I don't know. I'm getting old. Over 100 years ago, were you going to the grocery store? Or did you just go what you had? You had chickens and you had cattle. And, most people lived on the farm and they ate off the farm. Yeah. And you had vegetables and fruit in season and whatever, and you preserved them. And, I understand all that, but all I'm saying is here's the headline news. This is doctors' warning. Again from Harvard. Doctors warning that vegans and vegetarians need to take the risk of B12 deficiency seriously And one of the things they mention in the article, okay, one of the things they mention in the article is you're at a much higher risk for suicide. That is a serious sign of B12 deficiency. Suicide. If you even think of suicide, you're so depressed that that's a sign of B12 deficiency. Listen, this isn't Dr. Martin making this up, okay? This was headline news last week. It's incredible. Think about what I'm saying. Think about what that headline's saying. You don't get B12 in the plant kingdom. There's not enough B12 in the plants to feed a mouse. So don't fool yourself. That's what the headline is saying. If you have decided to be a vegetarian or a vegetarian and you eat eggs, you're better off. But if you're a vegan that has no animal products at all, you need to take B12 every day. You need to take vitamin K every day. You need to take vitamin A every day, because you might think you're getting vitamin A from beta carotene, from carrots. But again, that's not enough for a mouse, because the true vitamin A is proretinol A, which is found in eggs, meat, and cheese. You see why I say that all the time? Guys, that's science. It's not up for, I hate the word settled science, okay? Because science is never settled, because that's what science is. It's always open to observations and new data. I understand that. But unless somebody shows me something different from my biochemistry, biology days, you need meat. If you don't get it, then you need to take a supplement. Okay, I get a lot of patients, especially the young generation today. Doc, I don't eat anything that has eyeballs. Okay, I get it. Do I agree with it? No. But am I as a doctor in nutrition, I will help you. But you need to take supplements. You need to take B12 for sure. And you're not getting even the heme iron that you need. You see, your body needs to make red blood cells, and this is what they're saying in the headline. It's one of the biggest things. You're not getting enough oxygen. Why? You're not making red blood cells without B12 and heme iron. Heme, H-E-M-E, hemi. I don't know what you say, how you say it, but heme iron is found in red meat. When you have a steak, if you love liver. I don't like liver, but I sure love my steak and beef. Okay, so these are headlines. It's just confirming. You guys know me. This is just confirming what I've been saying for years and years and years and years. Like, I haven't changed. I will change if you prove it to me. If you can show me, if you can prove it to me, I'm doubting Thomas, okay? Lord, unless I see your hands and the nail prints in your hands and in your side, the spear, I don't believe. Well, I'm like Thomas. I'm a doubting Thomas when it comes to people trying to convince me. You know, you watch the Game Changers on Netflix, or you watch different, because it's an agenda. It's an agenda. It's driven by an agenda. They want to get rid of cows because they're farting. I'm not kidding you. The poor cows, they're creating climate change. Got to get rid of them. Okay, so here's another headline. Sunscreen. Listen to this. You're going to say, Dr. Martin, did you write the news? Or are you just reading the news? Well, this is reading the news, but I want to tell you what it said last week. Another headline Sunscreens causing more harm than good. Latest studies finding chemicals from the sunscreen in the bloodstream. Wow. Now, how about that? Right? How about that? Now, how many years have I been saying that? Were you ever in high school chemistry? Did you ever have labs? I was dangerous in the lab. Everything was good till I put the Bunsen burner on. Soon as you add heat, wow. I remember one time I just about blew up the whole lab. As soon as I turned the Bunsen burner on to this stuff I was mixing together. I can't even remember what it was, but it wasn't good as soon as you put the heat to it. Well, as soon as you put the heat to your skin and you have chemicals on it, it's never a good combination. Now we're finding out what I've always said. Those chemicals end up in your bloodstream. And I always, Dr. Martin, don't drink out of a plastic bottle. Okay. Don't drink out of a plastic bottle. I had one of my patients tell me that last week. Why are you drinking out of a plastic bottle? It's convenient. Okay, I understand that. I get it. I get it. But what's more dangerous than that? The same people that are telling me don't drink out of a plastic bottle are putting sunscreen on them and their kids. And they're lathering them up. And the heat gets to it. And you're putting 50 plastic bottles right into your bloodstream. That's what the headline said. Okay? Now that's controversial because, brought to you by Johnson & Johnson. Sunscreens really block your risk of cancer. No, they don't. Imagine the headline saying that sunscreens are causing more harm than good. Wow. That's a headline. More harm than good. Said that all along. Use natural sunscreens. And get out of the sun once it's, I always look for, when I'm in Florida, I always look for shade. I love my sun. I get 20, 30, I can take a little bit more because once you're used to the sun, I'm in the sun for an hour and I can take it. I don't burn though. I got a hat on and I cover up or I get in shade, I don't use sunscreens. I never have and never will. Okay? I use a natural. I love coconut. The Polynesians use that for years as their sunscreen. Now again, I'm not telling you to burn in the sun. Don't get me wrong. But melanoma, okay? There's three major types of skin cancers. There's basal cell carcinoma. There's squamous cell carcinoma, and there's melanoma. Basal cell is it really a cancer? When they do a biopsy, they see a few cancer cells. Well, that is overexposure in the sun. Okay? You get it in your ear, you get it on your skin. That's basal cell. It's not dangerous. Who wants any kind of cancer, but it's not dangerous. And then you have squamous cell. That's deeper. Squamous cell is the deeper cells within. Is it deadly? No. Is it good for you? No. It's not good for you. But again, I am not big on over-treating basal cell. And I know doctors like to take those things off. Anyway, I don't want to get into a big discussion on that this morning. But I look at things a little bit differently. I'd rather the immune system fight that because it's not deadly. Now, what is deadly is melanoma. Melanoma it can be a very deadly cancer. But guys, here's the facts. This is just the facts. People that get melanoma work indoors. Farmers don't get melanoma. They might get basal cell carcinoma, but they don't get melanoma. If you work indoors, you have very, very fair skin and you can't get outside much without sun. Well, you're more susceptible to melanoma than people that get out in the sun. That's just a fact. And so the sunscreen companies, they like to tell you something different. Oh, lather up. Not because of melanoma, though. Melanoma is people that are indoors. And let me tell you something else. People who get melanoma are very deficient. 95% of people with melanoma have very deficient levels in vitamin D, serum vitamin D levels. Yeah, they got no vitamin D. If you don't have vitamin D levels are good, you're much more susceptible to skin cancer. Did you know that? Not high levels of vitamin D, low levels of vitamin D. Yes. Isn't that incredible? Think about that. That's why vitamin D is so effective for everything. So if you can't get in the sun, you live in Northern Ontario like me, you're not going skinny dipping today, are you? What are you going to do? Take your vitamin D. I took my vitamin D this morning. Take it every day. You need vitamin D. Every cell in your body. It is one of the greatest things. One of the greatest things. One of the greatest things to protect you from every type of cancer. Every type of cancer is having good and optimal levels of serum vitamin D. And I had a little conversation the other day on our Martin Clinic Facebook group because one of my dear patients brought up a negative article on vitamin D and be careful with too much vitamin D. For one person that has too much vitamin D, this is studies done by the Vitamin D Council. For every person that has high levels of vitamin D, 250 to 1 have low levels of vitamin D. And they don't have optimal levels of vitamin D. And if you look at cancer statistics, esophageal cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer, skin cancer, brain cancer, you name the cancer, and the vast majority, over 95% of those people have low levels of vitamin D. Now, what's the connection? The connection is twofold, in my opinion. Twofold. One, when you have low levels of vitamin D in your serum, your immune system doesn't work very well. Okay? So vitamin D affects your immune system. It affects your ability of your body to fight cancer. That's number one. And number two on the hit parade of when you have low levels of vitamin D, it's directly proportional to your levels of inflammation in your body. Look, vitamin D isn't a vitamin. Vitamin D is a hormone. Vitamin D is a hormone. Your body can't live without vitamin D. It can't. And in the two ways that we know is one, your immune system doesn't work well without vitamin D. That's just a fact. And the second fact is that it seems that when you have low levels of vitamin D, you have high levels of inflammation. And you guys know this, that inflammation isn't the root of all disease, because inflammation is not Houdini. But this is why, like diabetics, for example, most diabetics have very low levels of vitamin D. What's the connection? Inflammation due to insulin. See, inflammation doesn't come first. Insulin resistance comes first. Low levels of vitamin D. See, vitamin D helps everything. I know I talk about this a lot, but again, repetition. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Because it works. Guys, it's keep your vitamin D levels optimal. It's not just that, like the people come in the office, I'm taking over 1,000 IUs of vitamin D. I'm worried about that. I look at women in their eyeballs, And I say, how much are you taking? How much vitamin D are you taking? Oh, 1,000, Dr. Martin. Oh, my doctor said no more than 2,000. I get uptight when I hear that. I get uptight, okay? I get uptight because it's craziness. A mouse does well on 1,000 IUs of vitamin D. Tony Jr. explained in an email not long ago that the calculations on vitamin D were based on bad math. So you got it? You got it? Vitamin D, important. I'm going to, if you hear me next week, or you hear me, Lord willing, it'll be vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D. It's my favorite vitamin. Well, vitamin C is close, coffee. Dr. Martin's vitamin C is coffee. Okay, I love that too. Okay, I love vitamin C. I always said this, that Linus Pauling, by the way, Linus Pauling, who won the Nobel Prize in medicine in the 1970s, won it on his research of vitamin C. He wasn't researching coffee. I don't know why he won that. He won the Nobel Prize. No, he was a genius. I loved Linus Pauling. I studied Linus Pauling for years and years. Always loved vitamin C. Coffee. But he only missed by one letter in the alphabet. If Linus Pauling had understood the importance of vitamin D in the 1970s, it just wasn't known then like it is known today, he would have done research on vitamin D. Okay? So, love you guys. Talk to you soon.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.